The Sterling Hills HOA boardroom crackled with tension. Margaret Van Horn stood, jabbing a manicured finger at Christopher Stanton.
This isn't just about noise, it's about property values. Every time that ancient Cessna rattles our windows, our homes lose worth.
Board members shifted in their seats. Gerald Prescott, the HOA president, wiped his brow with a folded handkerchief.
I've flown that strip for 18 years. It's grandfathered through a 1971 easement, and I've never had a complaint before.
The past is irrelevant. We have decibel readings that exceed our new standards. I move to fine him $400 per landing.
Gerald called for a vote. Hands rose around the table. 4-1, the fine carried. Margaret collected her clipboard with a smirk. Christopher picked up his aviator sunglasses and walked out without a word. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at Christopher's kitchen table.
$400 per landing. They've declared war on my life's passion.
He set the letter down beside his FAA inspector badge. The conflict was just beginning. The next morning, Christopher walked into the regional FAA hangar, badge clipped to his belt, Senior Aviation Safety Inspector. 12,000 hours of flight time. A man who knew every bolt on 23 aircraft models.
Margaret and her board have no idea what I do for a living, and right now, that's for the best.
He ran through the inspection checklist with the precision of a man who trusted numbers over words.
Looks clean, Bill. Sign it off.
By late afternoon, he was home, walking past the hangar where his own plane slept.
18 years of takeoffs and landings. This is where I breathe.
The airstrip was protected by a 1971 easement, a yellowed legal document signed by the original developer, granting perpetual access. His grandfather, William Stanton, had fought for that strip. In 48 years, no one had successfully challenged it.
They can fine me into bankruptcy. I am not abandoning what my grandfather built.
Margaret Van Horn believed in escalation. Within a week, she was standing in front of Peter Kowalski, the county permit officer.
Mr. Kowalski, that airstrip is a public menace. The HOA has filed 17 noise complaints, and I am here to demand a revocation hearing.
I'll need to see the documentation, Mrs. Van Horn. We don't revoke permits without cause.
The cause is clear. Decibel readings that violate county ordinances, and we strongly suspect his easement is invalid.
Peter took the stack of papers she thrust at him, his expression weary.
I'll schedule a review. He'll have 30 days to submit a defense. That's all I can do.
2 days later, a second certified letter arrived. Christopher read it at his kitchen counter.
First fines. Now they're trying to kill my strip entirely. This is a coordinated attack. I'll need a good property lawyer. Someone who understands easements older than the HOA's entire charter.
The notice lay beside his grandfather's easement. The battle lines were drawn. A week later, the HOA board convened for the formal ratification of the fine. Christopher attended, his easement document in a folder under his arm.
This board has reviewed the evidence. The noise violation stands. I move to ratify the $400 per landing fine.
Seconded. All in favor?
Hands rose. 4-1 again. The fine was sealed into the HOA's bylaws.
You are penalizing me for a right I've held since before this HOA existed. This isn't governance, it's vendetta.
The vote is final, Mr. Stanton. If you continue to fly, the fines will accumulate.
Christopher walked out, jaw tight. That evening, he sat at his kitchen table, staring at his FAA inspector badge.
I could audit every plane those HOA members own, but that would be an abuse of power, and I am not that kind of man.
He drafted a formal recusal memo, removing himself from any case tied to Sterling Hills airspace or its residents. That night, his phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Quarterly audit, Regional Executive Airfield, Monday, 9 a.m. Monday morning, Christopher walked the apron of the Regional Executive Airfield, audit checklist in hand. 37 aircraft were due for the quarterly spot check. Standard procedure, nothing out of the ordinary.
No conflict of interest. Sterling Hills residents keep their birds at a different field.
Then he reached the far end of the ramp. 2 Gulfstreams sat side by side, their paint unblemished but their paperwork suspect. He leaned close to the first jet's entry door. The annual inspection sticker was 6 months expired.
That tail number, N427VT, Richard Van Horn's plane.
The second Gulfstream showed the same violation. Its registration belonged to an HOA board member. Christopher circled the discrepancies on his form, pressing the pen so hard the paper indented.
Following protocol. That's all this is. Margaret made her choices. I am making mine by the book.
By noon, both jets were flagged for immediate re-inspection. The routine audit had just become something far more precarious. Christopher walked to the airfield management office and requested the maintenance logbooks for both flagged aircraft. For the Gulfstream registered to Richard Van Horn, he turned to the engine hours section and ran his finger down the column.
These numbers don't align with the tachometer data from the last annual inspection.
He cross-referenced the entries with the FAA's digital maintenance database. The discrepancy stared back. 47 unlogged hours.
That's not oversight. That's concealment of critical wear.
Christopher attached a red discrepancy tag to the logbook page and photographed it as evidence. By the end of the day, the FAA's automated system transmitted airworthiness concern notices to the registered owners. Richard was in his corner office when the email landed. The subject line made his stomach drop. FAA notification, inspection deficiency, N427VT.
Margaret, get in here. The FAA is auditing my jet.
His voice cracked. He'd been hiding those engine hours for 2 years, and now they were exposed. Less than an hour after Richard's frantic call, Margaret's Range Rover screeched to a halt outside Christopher's hangar.
You think I don't know what you are doing? This audit is retaliation. Plain and simple.
Christopher didn't look up from the pre-flight checklist he was running on his Cessna.
The audit was scheduled months ago. I recused myself from any case involving Sterling Hills residents.
Recused? You are still the inspector who flagged my husband's plane. That's a conflict of interest.
I followed FAA protocol. If your husband's records were clean, he'd have nothing to worry about.
I'll report you to your supervisor. I'll have your badge for this abuse of power.
Christopher set down his clipboard and finally met her eyes, his voice dangerously even.
You are welcome to file a complaint. The investigation will show I followed every regulation to the letter.
Margaret spun on her heel, heels clicking, but the threat lingered like jet exhaust. Sunlight glinted off Richard Van Horn's Gulfstream as Christopher climbed the air stair. He opened the maintenance log to the 14th of March.
That day, this aircraft was in Scottsdale for a charter, logged in the flight manifest. The inspection never happened.
A falsified maintenance record was the single most serious violation he had ever documented. He descended the stairs, pulled out his official red tag, and affixed it to the main cabin door. The FAA grounding notice went electronic within minutes. Richard's jet was officially unairworthy. On the spot, Christopher ordered a fleet-wide review of every aircraft registered to Sterling Hills residents. By sunset, 14 private jets wore the same red notice. The executive airfield became a cemetery of grounded luxury. Word spread faster than the engines those jets would never fire. HOA members flooded the airfield office with calls. Margaret stood in the community center, a dozen furious neighbors waving FAA letters in her face. The fines they had levied against Christopher now looked small compared to the catastrophe engulfing them. The grounding couldn't have come at a worse time. Richard's Gulfstream was booked for a 6-leg executive charter with NovaCorp, a Fortune 500 logistics giant. The contract, worth $2.3 million, hinged on a single clause. The aircraft had to be operational by end of business Monday. It wasn't. When the phone rang in Richard's office, he knew. His boss's voice came through like a blade.
I can fix this. Give me 24 hours.
The CEO's reply was a single sentence. The contract is void, effective immediately. The line went dead. Richard stared at the handset, then at the confirmation email from NovaCorp. An hour later, Richard stumbled through the front door of their Sterling Hills mansion.
We lost the NovaCorp charter, Margaret. $2.3 million.
That FAA inspector did this. He's destroying our lives over some stupid noise fine.
She grabbed a crystal vase from the mantelpiece and hurled it against the marble fireplace. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. The next morning, Richard drove to his office one last time, A termination letter lay open beside an empty cardboard box.
18 years at Whitmore Capital, and they fire me over a noise complaint.
He filled the box with personal mementos. His shoulders slumped under the weight of disgrace. Across town, Gerald Prescott faced a far worse humiliation. The HOA's chief investor had summoned him to a hotel conference room. The check for the $2 million clubhouse expansion was slid back across the table. The verdict was brief. Sterling Hills is now a liability. I am withdrawing all funding, effective immediately. By evening, Gerald called an emergency board meeting. The room was a pressure cooker.
We're facing lawsuits from the grounded jet owners, and the county is reviewing our charter.
Then we fight. We double down on the noise violation. Make that pilot suffer.
But the board wasn't listening to Margaret anymore. They saw the wreckage she had caused. 2 days after the board's implosion, a call came. The HOA's attorney, Nathan Cole, had an offer and a desperation he couldn't hide.
Mr. Stanton, the board authorizes me to propose a settlement. We'll forgive all fines and withdraw the county complaint if you rescind the FAA audit findings.
Forgive the fines they invented. They really don't understand who they're dealing with.
Christopher listened, then spoke with the calm of a man who knew the sky would always support him.
Here is my counteroffer. The board pays $190,000 in FAA fines. They rebuild my airstrip to county code, and they publish a public apology in the next community newsletter.
There was a long pause. Nathan Cole's smooth voice cracked when he finally answered.
That's significant. I can take it to the board, but they'll likely refuse.
Then they can explain to the federal prosecutor why Richard Van Horn's jet had falsified records.
Christopher ended the call. He set the phone beside his grandfather's easement. The old paper, a silent witness. The HOA had 48 hours. The terms were non-negotiable. Margaret's formal complaint landed on the desk of Christopher's FAA supervisor. By morning, he was summoned to the office. She reviewed the audit file, the recusal memo, and the noise complaints. Then, she closed the folder and gave a single nod.
Margaret's last weapon just bounced off 3 decades of clean service records.
While Margaret fought the FAA, the real danger to the HOA was already in motion downtown. 3 separate lawsuits were filed that afternoon by grounded jet owners. The Sterling Hills board now faced a wall of litigation. Gerald Prescott called an emergency session. The boardroom was a gallery of pale faces and trembling hands.
We can't fight this. Stanton's terms are brutal, but if we go to court, we'll lose everything.
You are all cowards. He's just one man with a noisy plane.
But no one seconded her. The motion to accept the settlement was placed on the agenda for a final vote. That evening, Christopher sat on his porch, the easement in his pocket. The board would fold, he knew it. The next afternoon, the HOA board convened in the same room where they had fined him. This time, the air was heavier.
We have a motion to accept Mr. Stanton's settlement terms in full. All in favor, raise your hand.
4 hands rose. Gerald's trembled. Margaret's remained pressed flat on the table.
You'll regret this capitulation. You are surrendering to a man who weaponized his federal badge.
The vote carried. Within 48 hours, the board wired $190,000 to the escrow account.
$190,000 doesn't erase the harassment, but it's a loud statement in their own language.
By Saturday morning, heavy machinery rolled onto Christopher's property. Graders, rollers, survey crews. He stood at the fence line watching. The easement document was in his jacket pocket.
Grandpa would have liked this. The strip wasn't just repaired, it was vindicated.
The reconstruction had begun, but the public apology, the final piece, still hung over the board like a guillotine. The next morning, Christopher stepped onto his property and froze. The freshly graded strip had been torn apart by deep, violent tire tracks.
They couldn't win with the law, so now they're trying to win with a crowbar.
Tire treads led from the strip to the back road, vanishing onto the county highway. He photographed everything and called the sheriff. Hours later, he sat in his hangar office, watching grainy security footage. A dark SUV circled the strip at 2 a.m., tires spinning intentionally.
Not Margaret's Range Rover. This is cheaper, older. Someone she stirred up, probably.
By evening, a deputy identified the vehicle. An HOA resident with 2 grounded jets had acted alone, blaming Christopher for his financial ruin. The man confessed. Christopher had a choice: press charges or let the HOA pay for repairs and keep the project moving.
I won't press charges, but the board covers every dollar of the repair, and he writes an apology letter to be included in the newsletter.
The repairs resumed the next morning. Fresh gravel, new drainage. The strip rose again better than before, but the delay had cost precious time. The deadline for the public apology was now just days away, and the board had yet to deliver a single word. 3 days later, the graders pulled out. Christopher walked the length of the new strip, a level surface stretching toward the trees.
Flawless. They even reshaped the drainage the way I would have. My grandfather would call it a runway fit for angels.
Across town, the Sterling Hills community newsletter editor opened a file she never thought she'd compose. The board had fought the wording for 2 days, but Gerald finally approved the draft. She clicked send to print with a resigned sigh. The headline read, "Apology to Christopher Stanton. The board acknowledges its error." It would go out to every mailbox in Sterling Hills. That evening, a messenger delivered an advance copy to Christopher's hangar. He opened the envelope and read the board's confession in silence.
They used the word error, not inconvenience or misunderstanding. This is an admission of defeat, loud enough for the county to hear.
He set the newsletter beside his easement document. The 2 papers now told a single story.
On the day they read this aloud, I'll fly. Not to threaten, but to remind them what they tried to bury.
The ratification meeting was scheduled for Saturday. The whole community would be there, and so would the roar of his engine. The Sterling Hills Gazette hit mailboxes Friday morning. The headline, "Apology to Christopher Stanton," dominated the front page. In his hangar, Christopher held the newsletter like a trophy. The words "admits its error" echoed in his mind.
They fought for months to avoid writing this. Now it's immortalized in print.
He folded the paper and walked to his Cessna. The pre-flight inspection was a ritual he never rushed.
9 a.m. tomorrow. Their meeting starts. My engine will interrupt it with the truth.
He ran his hand along the wing's leading edge, checking for dents or cracks. Perfect. The fuel was clean, the pitot tube clear. Every flight control moved with familiar precision.
You've carried me through bush country and boardroom battles, old girl. One more flight for closure.
He climbed into the cockpit, ran through the checklist, then shut down again. No need to hurry. He finished his walk-around and stood beside the Cessna. The evening light painted the hangar in gold. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. Christopher pulled the chocks from his Cessna's wheels as the sun burned off the last fog.
They'll hear the engine first, then they'll look up. That's the order I want.
He taxied to the threshold of the rebuilt strip, run-up complete. Everything in the green. He pushed the throttle forward. The Continental engine roared, and the Cessna surged down the asphalt. The wheels left the pavement he had fought to keep, climbing into the blue.
Climbing through 800 feet, turning toward the clubhouse. 5 minutes out.
Below, the grid of Sterling Hills rolled into view, manicured lawns, identical rooftops, and the HOA pavilion.
Perfect. The boards gathered on the lawn. Time to remind them what they tried to silence.
He reduced power and began a gentle descent, leveling off at 500 feet. The Cessna's shadow raced across the rooftops. In seconds, they'd all look up. The moment was one breath away. At the HOA pavilion, Gerald Prescott adjusted the microphone. Residents fanned themselves with the apology newsletter. The board sat rigid behind him.
We are here to ratify the settlement with...
A low drone swelled from the east. Gerald's words died. Every head tilted skyward. The red and white Cessna roared over the treetops. No more than 300 feet up, its shadow slicing across the lawn. Then the wings dipped left, then right, a deliberate waggle, a pilot's salute to the crowd below.
That sound used to cost me $400. Today, it cost them everything they threw at me.
Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another. The board's faces were a gallery of shock and slow comprehension.
He turned a fine into a fly past. Margaret was wrong about everything.
The Cessna climbed gracefully, engine fading to a hum, then silence. The sky reclaimed its stillness. Gerald turned back to the microphone. the settlement document trembling in his hand. The ratification could now begin.
I, Gerald Prescott, president of this board, hereby ratify the settlement offer agreed upon with Christopher Stanton. The board acknowledges its error and extends its formal apology.
The document was signed, the apology binding. The dispute that had nearly cost Christopher his strip was now entombed in ink. The red and white Cessna banked gently above the treetops, heading home to the strip it had fought for. Its tires kissed the asphalt of the newly rebuilt strip, a soft puff of blue smoke marking the touchdown. He taxied to the hangar, and as the propeller spun to a stop, a cluster of neighbors emerged from the tree line, clapping. 3 months ago, they had fined him for noise. Now they cheered the very sound. Gerald Prescott walked forward, extending his hand. Not as an adversary, but a man conceding defeat with grace.
You deserve this, Stanton. I am sorry it took us so long to say it.
Took you long enough, Prescott. But the runway's straight again, and my plane's where it belongs.
The handshake sealed not just a settlement, but the end of a war that had reshaped Sterling Hills forever. As the crowd dispersed, Christopher pushed his Cessna back into the hangar. The sunset poured through the open doors like liquid honey.
The strip is straight. The apology is printed. My badge is clean. That's the trifecta that matters.
He pulled the hangar doors until they were nearly closed, leaving only a slit of brilliant sky. Walking to an old wooden stool, he sat and faced the airstrip he had nearly lost.
Fines, vandalism, lawsuits. All of it bought me exactly what I already had. But now they know.
He picked up the apology newsletter and his grandfather's easement, holding them side by side.
Grandpa, I didn't let the bastards take what's ours. And I never bent a regulation to do it.
He set the papers on the workbench beside his FAA badge. The 3 items formed a quiet triptych of vindication.
Strange how the system can work when you stop trying to game it and just let the truth fly.
Outside, the last light dipped below the horizon. Inside, Christopher Stanton had reclaimed more than an airstrip. He had reclaimed the peace of a man who stood his ground. 6 weeks later, the FAA regional office issued enhanced inspection protocols, citing the Sterling Hills audit as a case study. Richard Van Horn started as a senior consultant in a modest office, his corner suite now a memory. His new business card read simply, Richard Van Horn, Senior Consultant. The CFO title was gone. The sold sign went up on Margaret's mansion. She refused to face the community she had fractured. From the passenger seat of a rental SUV, she watched the subdivision disappear in the side mirror. Christopher's Cessna soared over green farmlands, its engine a contented hum. Below, the patchwork of fields stretched peacefully. Indifferent to the battles finished above, he flew without a flight plan, simply enjoying the view his rebuilt strip had earned him. The Cessna banked gently, the sun catching its wings as it turned toward the strip. The engine's note faded into the breeze, a sound no longer fined, but finally free. That same evening, Christopher settled into the old rocking chair on his porch, a tumbler of lemonade balanced on the armrest. The last light caught the edge of the hangar roof, painting the strip in deep amber.
No fine can touch this moment. No apology can match the weight of a clear conscience.
He took a long sip, the ice clinking softly. The airstrip was silent, but it was his silence now. He didn't need to fly tonight. The sky had already delivered its final verdict. When you stand your ground without bending your integrity, the truth doesn't just fly, it lands where it belongs. The camera pulled up and away, the house shrinking until the strip became a thin gray line between the trees. Below, lights flickered in the Sterling Hills subdivision. The houses still, the jets still grounded. One man in his Cessna had held the line. The screen faded to black.